Thanks for tuning in at Brackeys.
Hello everyone and welcome to video number 7 in the How to Program in C# course. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at something quite similar to the for loop. It's called the while loop and it's really quite useful for a bunch of things. As always, if you have any questions throughout this video, head over to forum.brackeys.com where I, among many others, are ready to answer your questions. Cool, so as always I've opened up Xamarin Studio and I'm just quickly going to walk you through my solution to the problem that I suggested you solve last time. So the challenge from last time's video was to loop through the numbers 1 to 100 and print out all the even numbers. And the way I've solved this is using a basic for loop where I create a variable called I and set it equal to 1. I say that this loop should run until I is less, while I is less than or equal to 100. And we want to increment I every time we loop through. And then I just check if I is evenly divisible by 2. So this percentage sign here is an operator that will check if, for the remainder of a division. So if I is equally divided by 2, it will result in 0. And if it does, I simply write out the number and separate them with a comma and a space. So in order to see this in action, let's go ahead and hit play. And you can see that it prints out 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and it goes all the way up to 100. Cool. So let's just delete this for now, leave the console.read key, and let's delve into the world of while loops. So a while loop can perform many of the same operations that a for loop can, such as counting numbers. Let's say we wanted to print out the numbers 1 through 10. Then we would create an integer. We could just call this I, stick to the same naming convention as before. We could equal this to 1. Then we could create a while loop called while. And then we put in a condition. Say while I is less than or equal to 10. And then just like the for loop and the if statement, we open up the brackets. And in here, by the way, I just quickly want to notice that you can also put the brackets down here if you find that easier to read. Many newer developers does. I simply just like them up here, but it's really something that programmers can argue about for hours and hours. So inside of this while loop, we can again simply say console.writeLine and then put in the I. But this is where many developers, beginner developers, go wrong with the while loops. They think, okay, I've created this I, I've set a condition, and I've written out, let's go ahead and hit play. No, no. This is not where you go ahead and hit play, because what we've created right here is what is called an infinite loop. And infinite loops are ugly as hell. They will often or almost definitely cause your program to crash because currently we don't increment I. I will always remain 1 and therefore it will never go above 10. And so we will keep outwriting lines into infinity, and that's really not what we want. So what we want to do instead is below the console.writeLine, we want to remember to increment I. And by simply doing I++, we simply say that I should plus equals 1, however you want to write it. So now when we play, you can see that it prints out the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10. And then it exits the loop, and we are done with our main method. Cool. But this is what you can do with a while loop to emulate a for loop. You can also do some other things. Let's say that we know a person called Tom, and Tom knows his basic math and he likes to play with dices. So he knows that if he has a dice with the numbers 1 through 6 and he throws this, he has a 1 in 6 chance of rolling a 6. But he wants to test this theory out in practice. So what he does is he starts throwing his dice, and he notates, he writes down every number that he gets. So on the first hit, he might get a 2. On the second, he might get a 4. And then on the third try, he might get a 6. So he writes down 2, 4, 6. And then he writes out, that took 3 tries. But he wants to do this a bunch of times so he can test out how many times this, how many tries it actually takes him to do this. So instead of throwing a dice each time, he's asked us to write a program for him. And this is where while loops are incredibly useful. So let's try and write this out in code. So first off, we're going to need some variables. We're going to need an integer, and we're going to call this number of attempts. And we're going to default this to 0 because we start out by haven't attempted anything. Then we want to write out another integer, and we are simply going to call this attempt. This is going to store the single attempt, and we're going to default that to 0 also. Then what we want to do is we want to say while attempt is not equal to 6. We want to do something. So while we haven't hit a 6, we want to first off set number of attempts, we want to first off set attempt to a random value. So we haven't hit a 6. Let's set it to a new random value. Let's roll again. So in order to do this, we say attempt equals. And this is where we want to get some kind of number generator. Remember in one of the previous videos, I showed you how to generate numbers at random. So if you don't know how to do this, or if you find the next part here a bit complicated, please go back and watch it there. So up here in the beginning of our method, we're going to do random, and we're going to call this number generator, or maybe just number gen, and we're going to equal this to a new random. Then down here, we'll say that attempt equals number gen dot next, and this will give us a random number between these two values, and we're going to put in 1 because it's inclusive, and then 7 because that's exclusive. So that will give us numbers between 1 and 6. And what we can then do is we can set the number of attempts to 1 more. So we can simply increment the number of attempts. And let's also write out what he actually rolled on this particular attempt. So let's write out console.writeLine. And we can maybe say Tom rolled, and then we're simply going to write it out like this. So we're going to plus attempt, and then maybe a dot. And remember the ending semicolon there, and a ending parentheses also. Oops, and a plus sign there. Cool. So Tom rolled, we insert the attempt, and then simply finish it off with a dot. And then we increment the number of attempts. And then when we are done, when we exit out of this while loop, it's because our attempt hit a 6. So down here, we can write out console.writeLine. It took Tom, and then we can insert number of attempts, and then plus attempts. So we're going to write out how many attempts it took Tom to roll a 6. So let's just say to roll a 6. Now let's save this. Make sure you don't have an infinite loop, that we are doing something with the attempt, and we are here. We're not simply incrementing it, but we're getting a random number. So let's try this out by hitting play. And you can see that here he was actually quite unlucky. It took him 16 attempts to roll a 6. First 4, then 1, 5, 3, blah, 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 until he wrote a 6 on his 16th attempt. Let's try this again. So here it took him 11 attempts to roll a 6. Here it took him only 3 attempts, first a 3, then a 3, and then finally a 6. And you can just keep on doing this as long as you want to, and it's now much easier to write down all of these results than simply rolling a dice each time. So that's a good introduction, I think, to practical problem solving using while loops. You can also do something else with while loops. You can do what is called a do while loop. It is used, not as common though, where you simply write like this, do, and then we put in, I'm just going to delete this down here. So the syntax looks like this here. So what you do is you first do some kind of action, and then you check if a condition is met, and if it is, it loops back and does the action again. Where with an ordinary while loop, it will check if the condition is met before it does the first iteration. So a do while loop is basically, you're basically sure that it will do at least one iteration. So that's the simple difference there. I don't think I need to demonstrate. That's really all you need to do. So thanks for watching this video. I think it was kind of short actually, and I quite like that. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video where I think we're going to be taking a look at methods, which is really awesome. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.